Greetings, salutations, respect, and love. I am Scott. You're in the Prog Corner, where today we're going to be taking a little musical journey. My life in 10 albums. Well, that's what the thumbnail says, but you know I can't just do 10 albums. I did something similar to this on Pete Pardo's channel, Sea of Tranquility, so I thought I'd bring it over here and soup it up, beef it up, and do 20. So my wife is a real avid reader. She's been reading these fantasy books and stuff, and at the end, they give you like a playlist, right? So this is the playlist to the story of my life. In 20 albums, the first one I'm going to show is Dave Brubeck, Time Out. My dad was a jazz musician. He played tenor, alto sax, guitar, and piano, and this record was non-stop playing in my house. Blue Rondo a la Turk, Take 5, just amazing. How did this come out in 1959? That's absolutely insane. This thing was progressive before there was such a thing, man. The next record that really impacted, really influenced me and changed my direction in life was the Beatles. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Absolutely, I love the Beatles, always have. My parents were big fans, so we had all the LPs, all the 45s. My two favorites were always Revolver and Sgt. Pepper's. I'm going with Sgt. Pepper's because it leads right into my third record that had a big influence on my life. Yeah, it's the Mothers of Invention. We're only in it for the money, and kind of a companion piece to Sgt. Pepper's. It blew my little kid brain all to pieces. I had no idea what I was even listening to, but I absolutely loved it. Yeah. Absolutely. A little kid should not have been subjected to Frank Zappa, that's for sure, man. I was like 4 years old. I shouldn't have been listening to that stuff. But, you know, concurrent to that, we were listening to a lot of this record in the house. This was actually, for a while, the only Stones album that I had heard. You know, I'd heard the 45s and all the radio stuff. But this, especially the American version of this album, Through the Past Darkly, Greatest Hits Volume 2, so amazing. This is all the stuff that I absolutely love about the Rolling Stones. Brian Jones, man, absolutely. His Mellotron playing on Dandelion, and just so great. I love it. Next up, the first album that I had heard that really took me to new places that I had not expected and I didn't know music could take you to. It was Tommy from The Who. This album is fantastic. If anybody wants to tell you that Tommy or Quadrophenia is not prog, punch them in the face because they're dead wrong, man. This thing is prog through and through. I don't care what anybody says. It's fantastic. Every song's great. You know this album. It's Tommy, man. It's one of the greatest albums ever. The first band that I personally fell in love with that was kind of like my band, because all those other ones, you know, I had parents, I had an older brother, so a lot of that influenced my taste. But the first band that I fell in love with, because I fell in love with them, it was Chicago, man. Their first 3 albums, just adored them, and then they did that live album, and then Chicago 5 came out, 6, 7. I love them all, man. Early Chicago's just dynamite. It is prog. There's a reason why Steven Wilson remixed this thing. Yeah, because it's progressive rock through and through. It's also protest music. This was a very angry band early on. Hard to believe what they turned into with all that soft rock schmaltz. But this was a very politically charged, very angry, very left-leaning band. Had a lot to say, and musically and lyrically, fantastic. Next up, the next record that found its way into my childhood home, and it really impacted me greatly. It's Zeppelin. I fell in love with Zeppelin 2. Didn't like 1 or 3 nearly as much, but Zeppelin 2 was my album. Absolutely loved it. It was my favorite album until 4 came out, obviously, and that's, you know, they got real good after that, man. House of the Holy Presence, forget about it. But yeah, early Zeppelin, just fantastic. I love it. Influenced me greatly. To this day, I still love Led Zeppelin. Love everything about them. But then my brother went away to college, and he came back on winter break with the cassette tape that had Fragile on one side and Tarkus on the other. So yeah, those are the next 2 records that influenced me. And these two really led me down the wrong path, man. Led me down the path of prog rock and, musical elitism and thinking that all music needed to, be art in some way. I've always felt that way, that music should not just be something you tap your foot to, maybe dance along with. It should have some kind of artistic intent to it. And these two bands certainly led me down that path. Thank you so much, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and yes, for that. Next one I want to show, this one's a little out of order because I'm doing these chronologically, but all of them I heard in real time except this one. I was a little late to Italian Prague. This is Musea Rosenbach Zarathustra, came out in 1973. I didn't really get into this until like the late 90s, early 2000s, and then the floodgates opened up for me with all the Italian Prague, and I have been hooked ever since. But yeah, man, if you cut open my brain, there's going to be some Italian Prague floating around in there. And yeah, this is probably my favorite RPI album. Just love it. If you don't have it, you absolutely need it. Mellotron drenched, nasty sounding guitars, raspy vocals, everything I love about Italian Prague right here. Next up, when my brother was at college, he went and saw a band touring their debut album. I didn't get to see him till a couple years later, but he came home with this thing. And he's like, man, you got to hear this band, man. They kind of sound like, Yes or Genesis or ELP, but they're American, man. And I'm like, yeah, we needed some American prog, and this is my favorite American prog rock band. This is my favorite American prog rock album. I love the debut from Kansas so much. I think it's absolutely perfect. Just dynamite. And that artwork, man. Look at that album cover. So great, so cool. Oh, yeah. Early Kansas is where it's at, man. And it definitely got me thinking about that American bands could be every bit as good as British bands. Yeah, they could. And then I'm 14 years old, and my dad buys a sailboat, right? He retires. I have to quit school. My little brother quit school, and we move on to a 30-foot sailboat and sail the Caribbean. So I had to get rid of all my records, and I recorded most of the stuff on cassette. But then, new releases, I had to get cassettes. And the first cassette that I bought when I got on the boat and got to a record store, some cat was talking about a band called The Clash. And I had to get this thing, man, because I had heard the Sex Pistols and I really liked it. But this one here, man, oh yeah, the debut Clash album, so good, so powerful. I just love it, especially the American version, because you got some other songs and you get the greatness of Topper Headon on that album, as well as their original drummer. But this is the UK version, so it's got Cheat and Protex Blue and a couple songs that aren't quite as strong. But I don't care, man. I love the Clash and I love this debut album. There's a story that once upon a time, 38 Special was recording in the same recording studio as the Clash, and they're kind of creeping around, man. They're like looking in, trying to see what's what. So finally Joe Strummer's like, hey boys, what are you doing? And come on in. So they come in the studio. He's like, well, how are you? And the boys in 38 Special were like, how do you get that guitar sound? So Joe Strummer hands the dude his guitar. He's like, strum a couple chords. And he did. He's like, well, there's your problem, man. You got to attack that guitar like you hate it. You got to play that guitar like it's your worst enemy in the entire world. And yeah, that's where you get this amazing guitar sound like nothing else I've ever heard. Every now and then, my dad would go up to Milwaukee for work. Even though he was retired, he did some consulting. And every time he left the boat and went to go to work, he'd come back a couple weeks later, and he'd always bring back a couple cassettes for his little boy that loved music on the boat. And one day he brought back this on cassette. Thanks, Dad. Wow, you know what I like, that's for sure. This one started me on a journey of exploration and admiration. I absolutely love XTC. You clowns know that. Yeah, then I moved off of the boat. When I was 18, my dad's like, hey, there you go, get off the boat. It's time for you to spread your wings and whatnot. So I got my own place, got a job at a record store, and joined a band. And my drummer came to the rehearsal studio one time with a cassette of this. And I was blown away, man. It's 1980, and he's got the cassette of this, and I guess he had listened to side one because he put side two on, and it starts with Transylvania, and I'm in love, and I have been in love with Iron Maiden ever since. And again, if you cut open my brain, you're going to see a little tiny section that's dedicated to Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, some of the heavier acts, Metallica, that kind of stuff that I've always loved. But yeah, Iron Maiden, absolutely. You know, during the 80s, the prog thing was just not really going, and I was getting into a lot of different kinds of music, and I was in a punk band, so I was listening to a lot of punk, but the best thing that I heard from that whole scene was an American band from San Pedro, California by the name of Minutemen. And this is an EP here I'm showing, A Buzz or Howl Under the Influence of Heat. If you don't know these guys, this is a great place to start because it's really short and the songs are absolutely amazing. D. Boone, George Hurley, Mike Watt, R.I.P. D. Boone, you were just fantastic. I think you're a member of the 27 Club too, but that's just pretty cool. Oh yeah, just your typical punk rock artwork. I love the Minutemen. They're amazing. So much so that, when we were in this band called Disorderly Conduct, I wanted to dedicate this album to the Minutemen, but the rest of the guys in the band didn't think so. So this is the 1986 Disorderly Conduct debut album called Amen. Obviously, that's Casey Chaos. He went ahead and formed a band called Amen and got signed to Roadrunner and Virgin and the System of Down label. So he put out 3 albums of Amen on 3 different labels, so couldn't really get any traction going. But yeah, here's the back of the album. Yeah, there's your boy. Yes, indeed. Yeah, so that's next up. We got, once the punk thing started fizzling out, I started getting more into like indie and alternative stuff. Lo-fi was a big thing for me. And the band that really started firing some synapses in my brainstem was Guided by Voices, and in particular, this here album, B1000. Yeah, it's signed by Robert Pollard. But, this is a band that did all their stuff on these, Tascam 4 tracks in the guitar player's basement while everybody's drunk off their mind, and it's Bob Pollard and just a bunch of drinking buddies. These are some of the best songs you've ever heard, like Beam Down from, outer space, being played on a cheap transistor radio. The whole time I'm listening to old Guided by Voices, my brain is like trying to figure out what these guys would sound like in a real studio. So your brain's doing a lot of work listening to lo-fi. Kind of similar to the type of mental gymnastics your brain has to go through when you listen to prog. So maybe that's why. Also maybe why I love Guided by Voices as leader Robert Pollard considers Guided by Voices to be led by the 4 Ps. Pop, punk, prog, and psych. So Guided by Voices is 25% prog. And I think that helped lead the way to, because during the 90s, you were hearing this resurgence of prog, this third wave of prog, and I wasn't really digging Flower Kings or Spock's Beard or Glasshammer or any of those bands all that much. And then this came out. And everything changed, man. Everything changed for me. Transatlantic pulled it all together for me. Now all of a sudden I can go back to the Flower Kings and Spock's Beard and, all the other bands these cats came from and with new appreciation. And this was the album that got me back into prog after a long hiatus, man. You're talking probably like a good solid 20 years away from the genre. Thank you, Transatlantic. Yeah, but I wasn't quite done with the indie stuff and all that alternative. I went to jail shortly after that, and I lost my second record collection. That sucked because I had like 6,500, 7,000 records, so that was a bummer. But when I got out of jail, I discovered this cat. Sufjan Stevens, man. I think he even got nominated for a Tony today. for the Broadway presentation of Illinois. What a fantastic record this is. Come on, feel the Illinois. The original had a Superman image there, which they had to take off. I guess DC wasn't too thrilled about that. This was the second installment in what was supposed to be all 50 states. He stopped after 2. He did his home state of Michigan, then he did Illinois and said, yeah, maybe doing all 50 states is not a great idea. And finally, the last record I'm going to show today on my little musical biography, My Life in 10 Albums, strike that, make it 20, is Wobbler. Oh, From Silence to Somewhere, man. This album just hit me so hard. This is a true representation of everything that I love about modern prog, where they take a lot of cues from the old dinosaur bands from the 70s, but they add a lot of their own special sauce, a lot of their own flavor. I just love Wobbler. I guess they're working on their next album. Fingers crossed it'll come out in 2025. I don't think we'll see anything this year. This is their masterpiece, From Silence to Somewhere. Absolutely love it. Probably my favorite modern prog album, probably my favorite prog album since the glory days of the 70s. So if you don't know Wobbler, definitely check them out. Anyway, Friday on Prog Radio, my good chicken heads, Friday at noon, it's going to be the Prog Corner playlist where Kevin over there correlates and puts together a whole playlist of all the stuff I've been talking about on the YouTube channel all week, but YouTube won't let me play music. So, I'm in constant fear of copyright strikes and YouTube taking my channel down. So I will never play music on this channel. Kevin will on Prog Radio, man. And then Sunday, the Sunday Prog stream at 1 p.m. Eastern. The top instrumental prog tracks of all time. We got some very special guests that will be joining me on Sunday, so don't miss that. Anyway, punks, fools, I love you guys. I'll see you on the hippity hoppity flippity floppity. Peace in the Middle East. Free the Ukraine and God save the king. Save the king, Chucky. Save him. That boy needs your saving. He needs your saving right now. He's got the cancer, but he might be in remission. I hear that boy might be all right. So bring him to America. It's not too late. Bring him here and we'll do some spells and incantations. Our prayer warriors are waiting for him. We'll dance with snakes and then we'll drink some poison. I'll see you punks Sunday. Peace.